Peter here, aka Peter Freakout 10, bringing you guys another episode of the Movie Review Show, where the good movies are always reviewed. Okay, back into our movie review, and I continue with my summer movie reviews, baby. Hell yes. Alright, now today's episode, before I start, I just want to say something sad, and this really saddens me to say. This saddens me to say, but I haven't seen Bruce Almighty yet. And it really saddens me to say because I was looking forward to getting a review out to you guys for the beginning of the summer, but sadly that plan fell through. So much was going on. And another reason is because of the fact that I wanted to get a couple of Jim Carrey reviews out, but, well, 3 I should say. I already did one, and that was Dumb and Dumber, but I wanted to get a couple more out before I watched that film, kind of establish me with Jim Carrey and whatnot, because I like to do that with a few actors' films, but, you know, is what it is. But I'm definitely going to get to it. Don't think it's not coming, because I'm definitely going to get to it. I just want to review a couple of his films. I already reviewed one, so I'm going to do 2 more. This and The Cable Guy. That's a film I'm really looking forward to reviewing. But yeah, moving on. As I said, 1994 was the year Jim Carrey was the bomb. And I think his film Dumb and Dumber proved it. For me, that is. That is the film that, to me, defines Jim Carrey for me. I think it's hilarious. His relationship with Jeff Daniels in that film was hilarious as well. The back and forth they shared, the chemistry was really well done. For the small budget that the Farrelly brothers had, I think they used it really well, and it barely looks cheap, the movie. And it's also the film that launched those two to success, so it was definitely a push forward for those 3, I should say, considering that the Farrelly brothers are 2 guys. But yeah, Dumb and Dumber is hilarious. I also reviewed it for the prequel, Dumb and Dumber When Harry Met Lloyd, which that film I love. I don't think it's as good as the first, but it still is a really funny movie. I don't get why it's getting so much hate. I've seen much worse comedies. I mean, if you guys think I love it more than the first, watch my review on it. That's weird. Watch my review on it. You'll see what I had to say. But just because I love Dumb and Dumber doesn't mean we can't ignore the other 2 films that came out that same year that also helped elevate Jim Carrey to where he is now. And one of those few films, one of the two films I'm talking about, today's film and Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Just a quick little rundown of Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. That's a film I really enjoy. When it came out, somehow it got so much hate. It really got so much hate from a lot of people. If you don't believe me, watch the Siskel and Ebert review. They tore that film to shreds. And I think even the sequel, which I have not seen, Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, even though I have it over there on VHS, I just haven't gone around to watching it. Those 2 films got torn to shreds. I think Jim Carrey will admit that the sequel was a miss for him. Some people like it more than the first, which surprises me. But out of nowhere, somehow Ace Ventura: Pet Detective got this huge cult following. But, you know, but there was another film that same year that helped change Siskel and Ebert's perspective. Because when they saw Ace Ventura, they were like, I'm never going to like Jim Carrey because he's so annoying. But this is the film that made them apologize to him. If there was any movie that changed their perspective on an actor, it's this film. And what film is that, you may ask? Let me get it a little bit closer. What film is that, you may ask? That film is none other than The Mask. Heck yeah. Now, The Mask was a film made, as I said, 1994, and I cannot believe who this is directed by. This is directed by Charles Russell, And if that name sounds familiar, back in the 1980s, he went by Chuck Russell. And in 1988, he directed the remake of The Blob, which I recently did a review on. But, wow, he did that film, The Blob. A film where millions of people get murdered by green ooze that fell from the sky. A child gets killed on screen, and what else? An entire movie theater gets torn to shreds, and a guy gets pulled down the drain. And he went from that to this. How does that happen? I think I have the answer, because this movie, this character, I should say, is actually based on a Dark Horse comic book, by the same title, and has some key elements from the movie. Well, typically the movie used key elements from it, but the book had key elements from the movie, and basically it sort of dealt with it in a different angle, whereas the movie itself played itself more like a comic-y kind of cartoon. The comic book was completely different, because it followed the story of the same character who has the same name in this film, but it was more about him putting on the mask and going out getting vengeance on those who wronged him, made fun of him, and it was more of a horror movie. It was more of a slasher kind of story with a kind of character study element to it, as opposed to this movie. And let me tell you, those comics were gory, they were crazy, and it just makes you wonder, how did they go from that to this? What happened was, New Line Cinema brought the property, and they wanted to do their own horror movie franchise with it, to be in competition with Freddy Krueger. But unfortunately, somehow, someway, I don't know how, but the plan fell through. And so, I think it was when Jim Carrey was brought in. I could be wrong, because he was doing stuff like Once Bitten, and maybe he wanted some change to it. I really don't know, but they changed it and went for more of the comic-y kind of cartoon approach that this film has now. And they pretty much got rid of the slasher elements, and that's pretty much what we have now. And the film, when it came out, I don't know if there was any fans of the comic book, because it was definitely more underrated, the comic book, but when it came out, it was a surprising hit. It helped elevate Jim Carrey from Ace Ventura to this, and then Dumb and Dumber helped push him forward, and it was definitely a big thing for him, and it was also a big thing for the special effects around the time. This was a year after Jurassic Park, so effects, CGI was getting to the point where it was being used a lot more. But we'll get into that later. But yeah, it was a big hit. It has a good percentage rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Metacritic says mixed or average. I don't know about that. I think it's more on the positive side. And it was a big hit at the box office, and they want to do a sequel, The Mask 2. I don't know about that, but yeah. But The Mask, with all that said about this film, what do I have to say about it? I really enjoy this movie. I definitely really enjoy it. I remember when I saw this as a kid, I was at a young age when I liked crazy stuff, and maybe watching this film, I was like scratching my head, like what the heck is going on? Because I was too young at the time to maybe understand it. Maybe that was why, but still, I really enjoy the movie. I definitely really, really enjoy it. When I say it's one of Jim Carrey's best, I won't say it's in the top 3, but it's definitely in the top 10. Definitely one of his top 10 best films. But it's not the greatest film ever, but it still is a funny one. To me it is. But I'll get into why I love this later. Or enjoy this, I should say. By the way, as I said, the film stars Jim Carrey, who already talked about. You also have Peter Rygard, who I don't know anything about. I've got a laptop here, so I might as well look it up. He was in Animal House. I forgot he was in that. He was Donald. That's who he was. Marathon. Chilly Scenes of Winter, Local Hero, News at 11, and a year before this he was in Barbarians at the Gate. You also have Richard Jenny, who I don't know anything about. What has this guy been in? Oh, he's a stand-up guy. He wasn't in that many films. Definitely more of like a stand-up guy. You have Cameron Diaz, who would later go on to be in Something About Mary and Shrek. This was like her film debut, and she was in that one film with, what was that film called? Where they Very Bad Things. That's the name of the film. I haven't seen that film. I just know about it. But yeah, she's also in Charlie's Angels, and she is hot in this film. I'm gonna say it right now. This is one of her. This is when she was at her peak. But yeah, she's here. You also have Amy Yazbek, John Ritter's wife, who's also in this film. Among many others. Ben Stein has a small role in this, who would later have a small appearance in Casper. He was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Very good actors in this film. Definitely a lot of good actors in this film. But yeah, as I said, this story differs so much from the comic book. And as much as I would like to have seen the comic book, because believe me, I think that if they went with the horror story, I think it would have been a great franchise. I think if they went with that, I think we would have had a new horror movie villain. But for what we got, I like it. I really like the film. So yeah, but anyway. The basic plot of the film is basically this. We meet this guy named Stanley Ipkiss, played by who else? Jim Carrey, who's a bank clerk, and is that what they call him? Yeah, I guess so. He's a bank clerk, and he's really down on his luck. He has a hard time getting women because he doesn't have like a backbone. He gets pushed around by his boss. His landlord is kind of picky with him, and I shouldn't say picky. She's a real twat to him. It calls him names and whatnot, and around the one night when he's with his friend, played by Richard Jenny, he gets kicked out of a nightclub and pretty much goes off to the bridge where his car breaks down and looks down, and he sees like this garbage pile and thinks it's a person. He goes down to save them and finds this mask, and basically at the beginning of the film we saw that there was a scuba diver, and the scuba diver ended up, well, this pipe ended up falling on him, and somehow, some way, it opened up the chest, which they had a hard time opening, and in that chest was the mask. And basically, he finds the mask, puts it on, and he turns into a completely different character. As Gene Siskel would put it, Robin Williams is Genie in Aladdin, which is basically what he is in this film. And basically, he uses the mask to basically win the heart of this woman, Tina, I think her name is? Yeah, Tina, played by Cameron Diaz, who's basically the girlfriend to this guy, Dorian, played by Peter Green, and basically, a lot goes wrong. He ends up stealing money, and the mask ends up taking control of him. But it's not taking control of him in the sense that he's becoming more and more evil. It's taking over him in the sense that he's not himself, and he pretty much relies heavily on it and whatnot. And basically, as that's going on, the money that he robbed was supposed to be robbed by Dorian, who's working for this guy, and basically, he's out basically trying to find him and kill him. And that's basically where the film picks up. Because now they're on this one big chase to figure out what's going on, whose does this mask belong to, and basically put a stop to all this. All the while, a lot of crazy stuff goes on. But now, will Stanley realize that the only person on the under the mask that can stop this is himself? Or will Dorian have his revenge? Wait a minute, let me rephrase that. Will Stanley realize that the only person who could stop Dorian is the person under the mask? Or will Dorian be whacking him with the golf club? That's the best I can do. Literally, the best I can freaking do. Let me get this off. A little hot. But moving on. Yeah, I really enjoy this film. I definitely really enjoy it. For a step away from what Chuck Russell, or Charles Russell, however you want to call him, did in The Blob, that horror movie he did, I thought he did a really good job with this film. I really thought he did a good job with it. I think he really brings this cartoony approach to it, while also giving this real kind of, like, gothic, dark comedy take to it that I really feel fits the film perfectly, and I think he did it really, really well to this film. Everything has this cartoony angle to it. From the camera angles, to the effects, to Jim Carrey himself. It's all done like a cartoon. And I think that he did it really, really well. And I don't think Charles Russell gets enough credit as a director. I really wish he'd do another film like this. I don't know what he's been doing recently, but I think he did it really well, this film. I like the shots, I like the angles, like the scene where he comes out of the building and it's like, and the camera's down like this and you see him like going out. Ah! That's, to me, what I enjoy about this film, but yeah. But yeah, and also the shots are really well done. Some other shots, I should say, like the opening shot on the city when you get like that whole kind of like view on the mask. I like how it's like it shows like the area where it's going on, like the underwater shots. All of them are done really well. And I just think Chuck Russell understood what the film was going for, even if it wasn't this whole kind of comedic feel to it. I think it still would have worked. I really think it still would have worked as a horror movie. So overall, I think that he did a good job directing it. And the acting in this film is top notch too. Jim Carrey, I think, does a great job of this film. As Gene Siskel said, he has a lot of help from many of the other actors to push him forward. But to me personally, I think Jim Carrey is the main star of the film because I love the few scenes of him as this character because he's able to play two different characters in the same body. Because on one hand, you have Stanley Ipkiss, who in real life is this nice guy. He doesn't have a backbone, and like he's pushed around by everybody, but he's a nice guy. He's a nice guy, like the opening scene where he tries to go out with this one girl, and she's like, "I want to bring a friend with me," but he's like, they were sold out of the tickets, and he confesses to her, like, "Why don't you go with her? I'll stay behind." That's a nice thing to do. Or the few scenes where you see him interacting with Tina. I think Jim Carrey did it really well in that character. I like the scenes with him watching those cartoons, Tex Avery, which he later references in the film, but I still think he did it really well. And you feel sorry for the guy. You really feel sorry for him. Like when he goes to the car shop, where one of the guys is actually Blake Clark from Little Nicky, Jimmy from Little Nicky, who just give him a busted up car. It's like, what the heck is wrong with these guys? Or when he's like taking the hit from that one lady, the stupid like landlord, and it's like, what is wrong with her? And he's just being as nice as he can about it. Like when he's about to say something, he's like, nothing. And then she fires back at him, and then he says under his breath, "Aren't you due back at the laboratory to get your glutes tightened?" That scene I thought was really well done. But when he puts on the mask, that's when he becomes the different character, and he's so fun in the role. Schmuckin'! Or like Or the one scene where he's hitting the wall with that big hammer and it's like, woo, snooze. Or like the scene where he gets back at some of the guys picking on him. And I thought it was all really well done. And I like the fact that when he transforms into that character, he's so much fun to watch. And there's never, as I said with my Beverly Hills Cop review, one of the things I love about Eddie Murphy in that film was the fact that he was never annoying. And that's the case with Jim Carrey in this film. He's never annoying. He's to the point where it's fun to watch. And I think he did it really well in this film. So yeah, and I also love how even when after he dons the mask, he starts to like stick up for himself more. Like the one scene where his boss was like, "You're 40 minutes late," and he's like giving him junk, and he's like, and he sticks up for himself. He sticks up for himself, and is like stop it and whatnot. And so you can see that what he's learning from the mask is basically he's using for his own life. So yeah. But Jim Carrey I thought was great. Peter Rygard I thought did a good job as the jerky detective who is always following him and whatnot. And like one of the scenes where he's like at the end where he ends up getting is like he didn't do it, like even though it was Stanley who did rob it, he ends up blaming the other guy, Peter Green. I keep mixing the names up. There's two Peters in this film. Peter Green ends up putting on the mask, basically comes in and shoots his boss, and he's like, I saw him in the mask, and he's like, and the partner that Peter Rygard is with is like, you're a hero, and starts to shake his hand, he slaps it away. It's like, yeah, I thought he did it really well, though. Peter Rygard played a good jerk. He was a klutz at times. I won't say he was a klutz, his friend was more of a klutz, but he was more of like, he's more of the annoying kind of guy who you see in every one of these movies as the cops, but I thought he did it really well. Peter Green, I thought did a good job as the villain. He's like this kind of assistant to like this boss, so you could kind of see he has the same kind of view to his life as Stanley. He's like the one who stepped on, but he's more of an evil kind of twin brother to the mask. Like the seeds of him like getting like talking to his boss, and he's like, you will have this done. He has the golf pin in his mouth, and he's hitting it. Like you could kind of see he's kind of like the same. You could see he kind of goes through that same kind of like weight that Stanley needs to go through. Only when he does put on the mask, he uses it for his own evil needs, whereas Stanley, while they're evil, it almost feels like he doesn't have control of himself, and you kind of like see that a bit, but it's more like an innocent kind of uncontrolling. It's not as like mean as what he's doing. He's not killing people, unlike Peter Green's character. And basically what was I gonna say? And basically as the film goes on, he becomes more and more evil. Then you have like Richard Jeni as the best friend. I almost forgot to say, but Peter Green I thought did a good villain. Definitely a good bad guy you love to hate. Richard Jeni that you also have as the best friend, and I thought he did it really well. I like this guy in this film. I thought he was funny. Definitely the scenes with him interacting with Jim Carrey. Like the one scene where he first meets Cameron Diaz and he grabs her coat and he's like sniffing it. I'm like, what in the heck? It's so creepily funny. And that's another thing with this film. The jokes themselves are creepy, some of them, but they're not to the point where they're like, I don't know, as I said, grabbing a guy's dick and fracturing it. That and The New Guy, that wasn't funny. Or Kevin Kline dressing up like a woman in Wild Wild West. They're creepily funny to an extent, and I really enjoy that about the film. But moving forward, Richard Jeni, I thought, did a good job. Definitely has some good jokes to him. Amy Yazbek, for the small role she had, I thought she did a good job. But Cameron Diaz is hot in this film. Cameron Diaz is like one of the highlights. This was her first film, and she does it really well. She doesn't come off as the damsel in distress, and even when you see her at the beginning, like the few scenes, like the scene of her where you get the idea that she is working for the boss, you could tell she was doing it. She wasn't doing it because she wanted to. She was doing it because she had to survive. She was afraid of what her husband would do, and she's not. She's the kind who's like, this is wrong and whatnot, and even when she meets Stanley and falls in love with him, you kind of see, like, yeah, she knows this is wrong and whatnot, and even when she meets, like, when she sees, like, the mask, it falls head over heels for him, it's like, yeah. But Cameron Diaz, I thought, did a good job. I like her chemistry with both Stanley Ipkiss and the Mask himself, whereas the Mask is more like a wildlife kind of romance, whereas Stanley is more kind of natural. But either way, they were both fun to watch. They come off as I always say, the screwball, quirky comedies I really enjoy, and it was done really well in this film. Definitely done really well. But where you got to talk about the film, the one thing you can't ignore about the film is the effects. The effects in this film, as I said, this was one of the films that pushed CGI to the limit. This was around the time you had films like The Abyss, Terminator 2, Jurassic Park. This was one of the few that did it. And then a year after, you would get Casper, which is another film that helped push effects to the limit. And the effects in this film are tremendous. Industrial Light and Magic help with the effects. I think they did a really good job with the CGI in this film. And I think that as I said, the cartoony nature to this film also comes in the special effects, and I think these special effects look really cool. Like the transformation of Stanley into the mask, which the makeup on him, I gotta say, looks really well done. I'm not sure if it's CGI or whatnot. Let me check. I don't know, but if it is makeup, it's really good. And I like the fact that the mask itself looks like a normal mask. It's not a fake-looking thing with hair on the top and whatnot. And I think that the makeup for it was actually really well done. Even on, like, when Dorian or whatever his name is, puts on the mask, and he's, like, a completely different guy. And I like the fact that the mask in this film actually displays their personality and really comes off more as, say, really does it based on their personality. For example, like the few scenes where Stanley puts on the mask, it kind of represents him, the fun side of him, whereas Dorian puts it on, it's more of like the boss and gangster side of him, and I really like how it looks for the both of them, even though Dorian has hair and he doesn't. But I like the makeup on them. And I also like the fact that it's just a plain old mask. It's nothing like, it's not fake looking or whatnot. But, I know I already said that. But a lot of films tend to do that. They tend to add like this fake, cheap looking hair at the top that it's kind of like, well, it should be fake looking, but it doesn't look real in some parts. It doesn't really look real. But, moving on, and then it's not supposed to be real, but moving on, the other effects look really good. Like this part right here, I thought that was a cool effect, and I think the effects still hold up. I really think the effects still hold up. It's definitely easy to see that they were trying to be cartoony. It's definitely not to be like. It's definitely not to be taken seriously. They kind of had this cartoony nature to them that I think fits the film really, really well. And I definitely like the dog in this film. Definitely the scene where he puts on the mask and becomes the mask himself. That I thought was a cool effect. So overall, I think the film is a fun ride. Definitely a really fun ride. Now, does it have its problems? Yeah. It kind of, the pacing for this film in some parts is really sloppy. Like some parts, like one scene it's wild and crazy, and then suddenly it kind of drops dead and becomes serious, and mixing those two together I felt wasn't needed. And overall, I think the film could have benefited more if it stayed that wild and crazy side while also trying to maintain a little bit of like the side of the serious side that the film is going for. But in the final battle could have been a little bit more like this, like when Dorian, how what happens to him could have been a lot better. But overall, I definitely really like this film. Definitely a really great film. If you liked Dumb and Dumber or Ace Ventura: Pet Detective and want to see what made them love Jim Carrey, both Siskel and Ebert, watch this movie. Watch this movie. It is hilarious. But yeah, I highly recommend you check out The Mask. It's a fun, smoking good time. So, yeah. Either way, I give The Mask a 9 out of 10, and it gets my seal of approval. Definitely one you should pick up. If you like Dumb and Dumber, you like Jim Carrey, you're definitely going to like this film if you haven't seen it. So, definitely check it out. But that's my review for The Mask, and next time I'm going to do a review on Ang Lee's Hulk. Help me, because it's going to be 3 hours. But yeah, definitely going to check that out. A few reviews I have planned coming. That Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm also going to review Point Break. Been wanting to review that for a long time. Waterworld. Going to get to that. Judge Dredd. Senior Trip, and Congo. Those are the few films that I can't wait to review. We'll get to those soon. But yeah, that's what I plan to review. Might have another update for you guys coming soon. But anyway, yeah. I'll see you guys later. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of The Mask. Do you guys enjoy this film? What is your favorite Jim Carrey film? What do you guys think of Bruce Almighty? Definitely excited to see that for the first time. Tell me what you guys think of it. But, yeah. As I said, like this video, rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.